Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by Elena. Elena, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for joining. We're joined by Elena Raileanu. I've been practicing saying your last name off air. I think I've done okay there. You'll probably tell me different, but I've tried my best.
It's good. Raileanu.
Raileanu, got it. So, Elena, I'm going to do you a bit of an intro for the listeners. Back in early 2000s, 2004, you were a news writer. You did that for around 4 years. And then you got into the wonderful world of recruitment and talent acquisition. Your first role, you progressed from a senior program manager to a talent acquisition specialist, and that was at WCI. You were there for over 7 years. You then went on to Winter Wamman, where you were a talent acquisition specialist again, and then Liberty Mutual Insurance as a technical recruiter, and then State Street as a technical recruiter. And then you were also at Toast, where you had progressed onto a senior talent acquisition specialist, and then Rifi Health. You were then a senior technical recruiter at Amazon, AWS, and currently you are the director of human resources at Beyond Mission Capable Solutions. Did I do okay
Yeah,
for your intro? Did I get anything wrong?
that journey makes me sound like I am 60 years old, which is great. I started early.
Yeah, good. Well, look, Lena, I'm looking forward to the show today. There's a lot that you do in and around what I've just mentioned there as well. I know that you do some mentoring. I know you've done public speaking. I know you've got a big sister role, which involves mentoring and coaching. I know you're a career coach. I know you're a phenomenal dancer. I was looking at that post again that you'd got first place in all 5 categories. I think there's a lot of transferable skills there from getting good at any art, craft, or sport. I think there's loads that can transfer across to career progression in cybersecurity or any field for that matter. I'm looking forward to diving in and unpacking your journey and helping the listeners out. But yeah, I know I've done you a bit of an intro, but I never think I can do it as well as you. So basically, who are you and what have you been up to?
Yeah, Tom, listen, if somebody told me 15 years ago that I'd be here with you talking about my director of HR role, I would say, wait, what happened to my career in journalism? What happened? So really my professional journey began back in Moldova, my birthplace. I started working at 12 years old at the national radio station. Then I transitioned to the national television. I took on different roles as news writer, TV producer. But then during the summer, I was volunteering with children with disabilities. And that part was sponsored by an American organization. And little did I know that particular connection would bring me to the United States. I had 2 weeks to decide whether or not I want to take the job and accept that visa. I had to take my friends. I had to tell goodbye to my parents. I had to quit my job where my best friends worked there. So it was really tough for me at 21 to decide that I want to move overseas. And in February of 2008, when I landed in Boston in February, I don't know if you've ever been to East Boston, but it doesn't look like America on television. I had quite the culture shock. I said, where's Brad Pitt? Where are all the good looking people and beautiful skyscrapers? I worked with that nonprofit organization for 6 years. They had sponsored my visa. Quite frankly, in the first 6 months, I wanted to return home. I said, this is not the country for me. And the only reason why I didn't go back is because I didn't have money for the ticket. It was that simple. I couldn't get $1,000 to buy my ticket back home. So I was stuck here for another 6 years. And so while I worked at the nonprofit, I worked with a lot of people with disabilities, helping them find jobs and seeing them go from being unable to do a skill to being able. And I knew that I had a part of it. And it was really fulfilling. Eventually, I could not live on minimum wage. So I moved into the corporate world. And so I became a recruiter. I became a senior recruiter, dived more into tech. But along like all of these years, I continued to volunteer. And so I volunteered at Goodwill. I still do. YMCA, Parking School for the Blind. What I do is I help job seekers find jobs. It's simple as that. And so lucky me, all these like Goodwill and YMCA, they already have these programs in place. All I have to do is come in and coach. And my last job as a technical recruiter was at Amazon, and I was impacted by the layoffs, but I felt it coming. So I already started talking to people in my network. And when I crossed paths with my current CEO, I initially offered him free consultation on HR matters. And then when it was clear that my days at Amazon are numbered, he said, "Why don't you come over as a paid consultant?" And then he decided, or he saw rather, that I have more skills than just recruiting. I've worked in all the areas of HR throughout my years, and I have my PHR and SPHR certification. And he said, "You can be our director of HR." And I thought, yeah, I could. So I am.
Cool. Listen, there's loads there. Helping people find jobs, massively topical at all times, but even more so at the minute with what's going on in the
Yeah.
market. You could see, I love the fact you've been proactive there instead of reactive. You've seen potential iceberg ahead when you were at Amazon, and you've started building relationships in plenty of time, which again, I think would be nice to dive into. And obviously moving across the world, and truly that is the definition of getting outside your comfort zone and pushing yourself. Yeah, there's a lot of cool things there to unpack. Elena, obviously helping people find jobs. Where do you see, for anyone out there that's struggling, where do you tend to see people falling down or having issues, or what aspects do you think most people need to upskill on or need the most help with? Anything, any pointers there for the listeners on that?
Yes. Every time I call a candidate to let them know of their rejection, I make it a point to first ask them, how do they think the interview went before I deliver the bad news? And oftentimes the candidate, they express confidence. I think I did really well, but then they acknowledge they struggled in one area or the other. And so then I follow up and I say, "Okay, Tom, what exactly do you think you could have done better?" And 99% of the time, the reasons for which they think they performed poorly are very different from the actual reasons of failure indicated by the hiring team. And so this makes me think that candidates have really low self awareness. And the reason being is because their preparation typically focuses on general interview advice rather than specific factors that are hindering their own chances of passing the interview. After you interview, you never get personalized feedback. What you hear is, "Oh, we moved forward with somebody else whose skills lined up a little bit closer with what the team is looking for," but never, "Hey, Tom, when you say XYZ, you come across as XYZ." Okay. So my advice would be truly look for that personalized feedback. And so, sure, you can hire a coach if that's within your financial abilities, but also, I bet you have a friend who is a recruiter or a friend who works in HR, and it doesn't have to be your immediate circle. It can be your neighbor, it can be your sister in law's best friend, it could be anyone. Just go out there. And I know that most of my recruiter friends are willing and always take an hour of their day to conduct a mock interview with a candidate and give them specific feedback, because what hinders them is not that they don't follow the general rules, is because they specifically say something in an interview that hinders their own ability to pass.
Thank you for that. That's really good, and I think it's so true. If you want that feedback as well for people listening, like, you're right what you're saying. You will have to push, because whether we like to admit it or not, companies will just have templates that go out, and it'll just be standardized feedback and blah blah blah, and it'll just mean nothing apart from the fact that you're not moving forward, so you're looking elsewhere, and that's probably the only benefit you're going to get from it. But I think you've got a really good point. You've to get that, if you just ask, and you've almost got to be not pushy, but you've got to push for it and be a little bit persistent on that front, haven't you, Elena? You're just going to get the generic stuff if you don't be polite and persistent, shall we say?
Yeah, and you know where I worked before, so I will not point out the particular company, but I worked at a company where we had three scenarios of things we could say when rejecting a candidate. And it was three scenarios because we knew that candidates would put it back, so it would have been really ridiculous to repeat ourselves. But it was essentially the same idea. We selected a candidate that was stronger. And we were not allowed to go outside of that script because it was a big company, huge liability in case somebody sues us. And so, from a company standpoint, I understand why a company doesn't give feedback to a candidate, because the risk is bigger than the reward. From a candidate perspective, I can understand how that'd be very disheartening. But there's another avenue, right? You can seek that personalized feedback. You can have somebody observe you in a mock interview and give you that same valuable feedback.
No, definitely. I know a lot, and again, I won't name them, but I know we've dealt with big tech before, and they even have set questions they ask. They have set questions. Everything is templated, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think definitely to round off, to really push for that feedback. Elena, another thing, we pushed over it about 5 minutes ago, but you were like, yeah, I knew a layoff was coming. So what I did is I just went out, built a new relationship, blah, 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 blah. And you made it sound really easy. But what did you actually do? So people might be in this scenario now. And in fact, not might be, they will be. Like, I know there's people out there from conversations I'm having, and the reason they're on the phone to me is because they're worried about what's coming up, what's happening next. They haven't got visibility on their future or the visibility they would like. So you were like, yeah, did this, did that, built a relationship. How?
Wow, right. I mean, unless somebody tells me, look, I never get an invitation anywhere ever from anyone, maybe there's a different reason there. But for the most part, we meet people at a bus stop, at a party, at an event, and we do get invited. And what happens is that we say yes in the moment because we're so excited. But when the day comes, we decide, hey, I don't have a good hair day. I'm not feeling quite well. We make up an excuse and we don't go. Another time, we might look at the attendee list and think, oh, it's a bunch of nobodies. I don't know anyone there. We have the mentality of a taker. What can I take from these individuals that are attending? Probably nothing because I don't know who they are. And so we don't go. If we make just one little switch, instead of having a mentality of a taker, have the mentality of a giver. Look, I can go there and I can still have fun. I can talk to people. And you know what? I can actually listen to people because that's learning more, making them feel better anyway. And that's how you make connections. The easy thing would be you get invited, go. When you show up, make it about them. Be a giver, not a taker. Make it their therapy session, not yours. And boom, they'll remember your name, they'll remember your profession, and they'll remember that you're a great person. And that's all they need for them to refer you somewhere else. If I'm looking for an accountant, I will not say, oh, I really think they knew the general accounting practice. I don't know them. But I'll say, hey, Tom was great. And I know he's in accounting and he was just really great to talk to. AKA, I was talking the whole time and he was there listening. And here I am opening a door for Tom.
Thank you. Yeah. So basically, taking a longer term approach, having a giving mentality instead of a taking one, and just not making it all about yourself. And I really like that. It's what you've just said there is a bit. Is what I said on a post this morning. It's just like I'm doing a bit more. I used to do loads of meditation, by the way. Then I stopped. Now I've started again, and it does allow you just to take that step back. And I think that's what we're saying here. Is like if you just take a step back and stop thinking about what's literally right in front of you, and just thinking maybe even a few steps down. If you can think 10 steps down, you're probably going to go off and be like hyper successful. I think the further far you can look ahead, the better more successful you'll be. But yeah, just taking that longer term approach. Why don't you think people do it, Lady? Do you think, I don't know, just impatience or this instantaneous culture we've created on social media, or
Live in a culture of instant gratification. If I don't have a car but I need a ride, I call a ride sharing, right? Through the sharing app. I want something delivered in 2 days, I can get it in a day if I want to. I have a question, I'll Google it and I get it in 30 seconds. And so I live every day by getting what I want really fast. And so when I meet a new person, if that person tends to be boring in the next 30 seconds, all of a sudden my brain says, wait, no, that's not where you used to. Why don't you switch to this other person?
yeah.
And especially right now when people are so divided on so many topics, oh, you're on the other side of politics, on the other side of religion, you're on the other side of some other social topic, immediately your brain shuts down, builds a wall, and moves on to the next person. When in fact, you can learn more from that person on the opposite end. Why don't you just quiet your mind and listen to them? So that's another thing, right? We do meet people everywhere, but I don't know if you read the book, I think it's called Thinking Fast and Slow, but it was talking about thin slicing, right? We meet a person and we immediately ask ourselves, are they religious? Are they vegan? Do they have kids? And our brain also answers this question without any foundation, right? So we make assumptions about people and then we decide they're not on the same page with us on one or two or three topics. So we shut them down and we move on to the next person and we miss an opportunity.
Definitely. That on the ride sharing, I couldn't imagine going outside and waiting for a taxi or a cab anymore, which sounds ridiculous, but it's so true. It's the best one is like when your laptop's running slow and we're complaining because the
Right.
internet's not fast enough or this, that, and it's true. And I think in a roundabout way, it's almost like we've all created, some worse than others, but to a large extent, we've all created habits of just get it now. And habit forming's really powerful. I don't know if you might have read a book called The Power of Habit, and yeah, and like habits can be really positive or really
Mhm.
negative. So it's interesting there. I was going to ask you about a book, but you've jumped ahead of me. What was it called? Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yeah, that's a really good book. It's about making assumptions about people, and I think it helped me realize that I should not believe everything that I think. And so when I meet a new person and my assumption is that they're less than or they're not that interesting, I have to convince myself that I'm actually wrong because I have very little information. And it helped me be more present and truly and genuinely being interested in what this person has to offer before I can assume what they have to offer.
Yeah, I mean that prejudging people that ties in with an instantaneous world, just trying to save time. Yeah, that's no good. He's no good. She's no. It's all kind of, and then again, you form a habit around that, and it's all like a vicious cycle. But yeah, I really do think this all ties into career growth, career progression, relationship building, and relationship forming. You've maybe heard this saying before, but there's a saying certainly in I hear it a lot in the UK, which is your net worth is your network. If you've got strong relationships and you've got a strong network, you've got nothing to worry about because you'll always be okay. I want to talk about, and for everyone listening, we planned the show out, and I'm going completely off piece here, but I want to talk about your dancing. I think any art, craft, or sport that you've got to a high standard at, a good level at, you're competing, you've won competitions, that I think there's a lot of skills there that transfer into the professional world, into career progression, whether it's security or whatever it might be. I would imagine that was quite a tough journey to get to your standard. Was there setbacks along the way? How did you deal with them? Did it require lots of levels of resilience and anything that listeners can learn from that journey and the trials and tribulations that you went through along the way?
Yeah, I started dancing in Moldova, where I was born. And then when I moved to the United States, I wanted to dance again. And the private classes, a week of worth of pay. And so
Okay.
slightly unsustainable. And so I had to find social dances where you would pay $5, $8, maximum $10, and you would come in and social dance with more people and learn that way. In Moldova, I learned standard ballroom, and then here I fell in love with Latin, bachata, salsa, merengue, that sort of thing. But really, the standard, the classic ballroom was always in my heart. I just could not afford it. It's really different prices. It's a completely different world, but I always wanted to go back. And then finally, I found a studio and I was more able financially. And once I came back, and it requires grit, but I think of all the sports, it has the least risk for injury. Also, the biggest thing that I get out of dance is not the dance itself, is the social ties. Again, it is what it is. I made thousands of friends through dance.
Definitely. Yeah, you made so the social side as well as the social side you were just saying.
Yeah, and even when I didn't have money, there was often the question, do I pay this bill or do I go out dancing? And go out dancing was winning because it's more fun than paying the bill. So I think that or talking to my instructors and saying, look, I don't have money to pay for this class. I'll pay next month. And they would still support me and they allowed me to pay late. So when I was financially okay and when I wasn't, I always continued to go and show up for my dance class.
Yeah, yeah, definitely good. Listen, it paid off because you won. You won. Was it 3 months ago you won? I was looking. Was it about 3 months ago?
Yes, it was not too long ago. I won the first place in all five categories, which was unbelievable. I made one big mistake right at the time when the judges look away. So I hope they don't hear this podcast.
Perfect. Perfect time to make a mistake.
And I have another one coming in June. And so I'm really training hard for that one as well.
Yeah, very good. You know what? I think having something, there's multiple benefits to having hobbies outside of work. I think in a remote environment, gone are the days where, certainly for me, back in the day in recruitment, it was very much go for a drink after work or even go for a drink at lunchtime, dare I say it, years ago. And all that time's gone and that office time. I prefer remote working, but you miss that social element. So I think having a hobby outside of work gives you that. I think it improves your communication skills. I think if you're an intense guy or girl or you're pretty obsessive, I know I am, I think having that chance to switch off and think about something else. I
Yeah.
used to play a lot of golf, but I've stopped now. But yeah, yeah, it helps. There's a lot of benefits there, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned an important one, and that is communication. When people see dancers, we don't really talk during performances. But if I have developed my radical candor better than anywhere else, it was during dance, because and radical candor is when you really care about someone, but you challenge them directly and in the moment. So when you're dancing with your partner, there's not a lot of time to say, hey, we need to talk. Why don't you sit down? I have something to say, some bad news. No, you just say, hey, before you lift me, you need to stabilize me. You have 30 seconds and they know you care because you were there and you're present and you're not doing anything else, and you challenge them directly. And so it really helped. The way I communicate with my partner is it helped me communicate at work fast,
Mhm.
direct, with care, but clear and kind, but fast, right? We don't have time to go around in circles with my
Yeah.
partner, with my best friend. So that communication piece is probably as important as being a good, successful dancer.
Definitely, and again, I think across the board, and I'm hearing it more and more on client calls when I'm taking job descriptions verbally from clients. They're talking about the communication piece more and more. By the way, I bet you build a lot of trust in dancing really quick, don't you? Because it's don't drop me. Do you know what I mean? You've got to trust them. If you're like jumping over there and jumping over there, you've got to trust that person quite a bit, haven't you?
Sometimes communication happens with the eyes. You just have that look
Yeah,
that
yeah,
says it all.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So there's a lot. We have videos and we catch each other, and I know what you meant when you didn't say anything. I said, yeah, I know.
yeah,
You
yeah.
messed up, but that's what I meant to say.
Cool, yeah. So the dancing's helped you communicate. By the way, like when candidates are in process with you, either now or when you've been in any of your previous, where do you feel that they fall down in communication, or do you or where have you felt that people have been really good before? Is there any key bits of information there you could give us?
Yeah, it comes down to that self-awareness. When I'm coaching a client or a mentee, I always say, look, your answers should be somewhere between 1 minute and a half and 2 minutes, right? Because 2 minutes is what, 10 commercials on TV. If you're as interesting as 10 commercials on TV, you really have to make that answer more concise. So that is step one. When they answer a question and they dive into details too early or too fast, and some of those details might be incorrect too. And a good advice would be answer the question, use the STAR method, situation, task, action, result, and then ask the interviewer, is there anything more you'd like to know?
Mm,
And so that tells me that they can maintain this balance. They can respect the other person's time frame of communicating back and forth. That shows a lot of emotional intelligence when somebody communicates. Also, when do they use negative words or positive words? Look, I can say that my manager is super busy and not there for me and all sorts, but I can say the same thing by saying I work under minimum supervision. And you see how it still says that about my manager, but I use only positive words. Instead of saying but, you say at the same time. Instead of saying I don't know, you can say I know less than. And so
mm.
the length of the answers, knowing when to stop, and using positive words is probably the three things I would say are the highlight of good communicator.
Yeah, definitely. On them changing the words, I've just making some that I can't remember which book it is, but Tony Robbins talked about it. I think he's talking about but and like you just did there, and it can literally change a whole sentence, especially if you're like communicating in a written format and stuff like that. It can really alter things. But yeah, like I say, for everyone listening, I'm just hearing it more and more, more and more. Even on like really technical roles, sometimes on a 45-minute chat, I'm literally talking for 35 minutes about what the person needs to be like as a person. And this might be for like a pen tester or like a cloud security engineer. And it's like that shows you how important it is. If you're working on a consultancy basis or pretty much any environment, it's just everything. I think especially with remote, I think it almost becomes more important because you've got to be able to like you're not with each other, you're not seeing the body language as much. So you've got to be able to you've got to get these skills right, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. And we have two, three monitors. We'll look to the right, we'll look to the left. It's good to
Mhm.
communicate those things. Look, I will look to you to the right, not because I don't want to look at you, but because I have the second monitor. So it's just another layer of making the other person feel comfortable and making you look like a person who is self-aware.
Yeah, cool. So, Elena, look, I know you've done various things in terms of career coaching, running workshops to help people find jobs, running workshops for helping them refine and enhance their resumes and things like that. What tips, hints, and advice have you got on that front, on the resume front, or for people out there that are really struggling on the jobs market at the minute?
I would say think like a recruiter thinks. And imagine a recruiter that has an engineering role to fill and an accounting role to fill and an HR role to fill. Obviously, this recruiter is not knowledgeable in all of these areas. So they're really looking for matches, right? So if a recruiter puts a job description out there, a more junior recruiter especially will look for that match in keywords and
Mm,
job responsibilities and satisfy that need of that recruiter by tailoring your resume to that job description. Think of the recruiter being a 5-year-old who's saying, oh no, I have to look for somebody with HTML. I don't know how to code in HTML, but I'll find a person who codes in HTML by finding that word on their resume. And of course, when you work with more senior recruiters, then you can rest assured that they understand and you can give them your resume and they'll actually help you tailor it. But assume that most recruiters are junior, assume that they're still at the beginning of their career. So make it easy for them. Tailor that resume to the job description. Obviously, don't be dishonest, like adding things that you're not really have experience in. So that would be one. Another two is I coach a lot of students at Northeastern University, and what I found is the most successful ones are not the ones with the most impressive education, but really the ones that have more friends. They talk to their friends all the time. So a lot of my mentee did not apply for a job because the job description had 20 requirements, and she said, that's too many, I don't think I can do them all. But her friend applied and got an interview, and she says, don't worry, they're only looking for 5. And if that conversation didn't happen, my mentee would have never applied. And so communicate with your friends over and over, support them in their job journey, they'll support you in yours. And then give recruiters what they want, help them, make it easy with that resume being tailored.
mm, mm.
Keep your eyes open out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel what you're saying there on the recruiter thing, because I can remember at the start of my career, like if you didn't understand things, people would really almost talk down to you, or whether they meant to do it or not, it was certainly how it felt. So I think, yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think be really conscious and cognizant of that, because it's not going to help you build a relationship if people feel
And
like
it
that.
could be scary, right? When you're explaining your technical project to a recruiter and you can see that goes over their head. It's really scary because you're thinking, oh no, this is my gatekeeper. So, what you can do in that case, you can say, if you are willing to move forward with my candidacy, I can help you write a blurb about myself in the third person and say,
Mhm.
Elena has this experience, help you represent me better in front of your hiring team because I know you're busy and you probably have a lot of things to do. So I can help you write that blurb, right? Without looking
Mhm.
down to them, you can be partnering with them and helping them represent you better. And all you have to do is bypass the recruiter. That's it. From there, you'll meet a technical person and the hiring manager, and that's it. You don't have to worry about simplifying your experience.
Yeah, yeah, cool. And also, as well, you mentioned about just talking more and more friends. I think it's important now. I think with AI and automation and being able to automate so many, certainly repetitive tasks, I know we're not there yet with everything, but I think that makes the communication piece even more important, because if machines and AI is doing a lot of this stuff for, I think employers and to move forward, they're gonna want people that can have that human to human interaction to a higher level. I think what you've just mentioned there will just amplify as time goes on. Do you think that as well, Elena?
Yeah, look, I'm happy that AI is here. I remember when my mom was really upset that I was 12 and using the computer because she was not understanding. So I don't want to be that person to look at my students or my mentees and say, oh, no, don't use AI and be my mom again, right?
Yeah.
And however, what I want to say is that let's say if I had a child and they were still learning math, and they were asking for a calculator, I would probably not give them a calculator yet before they learn the fundamentals of math. Because if I ask them what's 2 plus 3, they enter the calculator says 500. They might not know that's really far from the truth, right? Because they don't have the fundamentals. So if you're using AI to enhance you, to help you, to speed you up, that's great. If you're using AI to replace your logic and thinking, then there's a fundamental problem. And as job seekers, absolutely, you can use AI to refine your resume. You can use AI to refine your message to the hiring manager.
Mm,
You can use AI to generate questions based on your job description, the job description and the resume. Sure, but make sure that it's flooded, it's not perfect. Make sure you refine the AI's message as well.
Mm.
Make it shorter, simplify it, unless you know the perfect prompts, which I know everyone is still working on.
Definitely, yeah. Use some common sense. Basically, yeah. It's just you know what I mean.
Pretty
It's
much,
true though.
yeah.
It's true. It's because it's if you do it blindly, you can spot it a mile off. And it's like anything in life. There's a balance with everything. If you use it
Yeah.
wisely, it's
I'll
nice. But
read
if
a message that I get. I get about 20 to 25 messages on LinkedIn asking me to review people resumes, which I think it's a problem in itself because what am I reviewing it for? What it doesn't match any job description, but sometimes I do review it. But this is a message I got the other day. It says, kindly consider the enclosed document, which delineates a comprehensive compilation of my professional endeavors, academic achievements, and pertinent. I'm like, what are you trying to say? Oh, you want me to review a resume? Okay. But
mm,
don't use AI to say
mm.
something that simple.
Definitely. You said earlier, you said you used the word concise, and that is a word that's been used by multiple guests I've had on the pod, and it's so true. And I find that when you're dealing with the more senior the guy or girl is that you're dealing with, the more concise you got to be. Obviously, when it's really big companies that I'm dealing with often fellow recruiters and technical recruiters. But if it's a small company, I'm often dealing with the founder, and they don't faff around. Like it is literally like really short emails or get on the phone and get to the point. Like people just like to just get down and
Yeah.
get shit done. They just don't like faffing around. Like everyone's busy. I think working on that clear and concise communication, easier said than done, but it's such a valuable skill, isn't it?
There's something I learned at Amazon and I'm really grateful. It's the pyramid approach to writing emails and communicating. So here I can tell you why I'm not delivering the report to you by Tuesday. And I really want you to give me an extension by Friday because look, I'm working with Ashley and she's on vacation. I don't have the data from her. And then I'm working with Sam and he said that he wants to look over it again. So I have all this data and then I need more help to put the data together. But really, what I'm asking for is can you please move the deadline from Tuesday to Friday? In a non pyramidic approach, is I'm giving you all this information so you can feel my pain and see why you should come to this conclusion of moving. But truly, like you said, the higher up people, they don't really care about the pain. They care about what can I do for you? Oh, you want me to move it from Tuesday to Friday? That's the top of the pyramid. Second, because I don't have all the pieces. And then the bottom is because Sarah is on PTO and Tom or somebody else wants to still look at it, right? If you have the pyramid, that's great. And when I worked as a journalist, I remember writing the news and they told us the same thing. Imagine that
Mm,
only the first sentence of your news makes it to the radio because they only bought 10 seconds of our news. You cannot start with the bottom. You have to start with the most important. There has been a crash on I-95, right? Or how many
mm,
people died, or whatever.
mm.
So that's the most important versus distract the driver, blah, blah, blah.
No, it's true. It's with I think with advertising spend, they say something like 80-90% of the ad spend is basically gone in the first few words. So make sure you choose those first few words wisely because, as I say, people just want you to get to the point. I think as well, Lena, like I've heard as well, like mirroring people's communication style is quite advantageous as well. So we've talked about people being really short and to the point. If that is how they are, you need to be like that as well. If they are quite senior and they are perhaps a little bit more long-winded, maybe they've got a team that's doing everything for them. Don't listen to everything we're saying as gospel. If they're really long-winded, they want to stay on the phone and just be like, "Yeah, you've got to mirror it to a certain extent." But on the whole, I do think people you know what it's like when you're nervous. Everyone kind of says a few extra words, and essentially we all waffle a bit when we're nervous. And it's just, yeah, I think if you can get that concise language down, I think it's really helpful. So the other thing, Elena, I just wanted to talk to you about is mentors. I ask everyone that comes on the show about mentors, how to get them. I think everyone needs to be acutely aware of who they're modeling themselves on and stuff like that. I think it can have a massive effect on career progression. What's your thoughts on mentors? Who have yours been over the years? Any thoughts, tips, hints, advice for the listeners on that front?
Yes, yes. I've been lucky enough to work with mentors in the past, and I'm currently mentoring several individuals in different stages of their professional growth. I think that my tip to finding a mentor can be a little counterintuitive because while you're looking for help, you still have to adopt the giver's mentality. versus a taker's mentality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is, again, by accepting to meet with people, by accepting to talk to people, by listening to them, by being their therapist, by being interested in them. So when you are in your element, you're making more friends and you are getting noticed. I think the mentors that I've connected with in the past were drawn to me because, and when I was fully engaged and excelling at my work, and I wasn't really seeking help. They just saw something in me, perhaps themselves 20 years ago, right? And they thought,
Mm.
oh, I can and I want to help Elena propel. And so I find myself up to this day, I have a new mentee right now from my group at Northeastern University, and I just noticed her and I liked her. That it comes down to that. I
Yeah,
really liked
it
her,
does.
how she behaves, how she talks to her peers, how she talks to her professors. I knew she needed a little bit of help, and I was just there, and I'm there when she calls and when she texts, and it's a natural connection. And it's dating, Tom. It's the
Mhm,
same. When you're
mhm.
going out there with a big flag saying I'm single, it's not the same as when you're laughing with your friends and having a good time, right? The
Yeah.
same with mentors. So hopefully somebody who has genuine interest to help you and an experience to back it up can will be attracted and drawn to you.
Definitely. I mean, what we're talking about here now is like laws of the universe and laws of attraction, and it's all just like I say. These are certain things in life that no matter how advanced tech and various things get, some of these things will just never change. It's how we're hardwired as human beings. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've had conversations like this in our agency. It's, you can talk about the history of the agency and we've done this and we
Mhm.
record. No one cares. It's if they like you and you're getting on, and like you're talking about yourself and your company, people just don't care. You're right. I say just let the other person talk, listen to what they're saying. I say think about them first. It all really, really ties in.
Yeah.
You know what you're saying about helping others and stuff like that? You do a lot of really cool work. And for people listening that are maybe thinking about that, like I'm sure I've read a lot of stuff about this, but when you're helping someone else, if you've got anxieties or stress or worried, if you are helping someone else and dealing with someone else's problems, you actually can't think about your own and it relieves all your own anxiety and your stress. So it's like really helpful for them, but it's mutually beneficial. It's helpful for everyone. So people that are thinking about that, if you are having worries, if you have got stuff on your mind, to help others and mentor others in any way, shape, or form is helpful, not just for the person on the other end, but it's helpful for yourself as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and for sure, I remember the first time I had to stand in front of 200 students at Northeastern, and they're all looking at me, waiting to start. And my first thought was, wow, I'm 20 years older than you. Elena, please don't say anything that is old fashioned, or don't mention this social platform or that one. Of course, I had this imposter syndrome looking at all these students with masters in computer science, and I don't know how to write code or anything like that. If I struggle with anything when I coach someone, is I certainly am thinking, wow, you're so impressive. What can I help you with? And every single time, the moment they ask a question, and I'm thinking, okay, wow, okay, yeah, you need help. Based on the question you just asked, you really need help. And yeah, I think when I'm with someone, I'm present and I'm so lost in the zone with them and trying to be their partner on their journey that I do forget about my personal
Mm,
issues that are happening in the
mm,
moment. And then even when I leave the conversation, I still have half of my brain occupied and preoccupied by, will they follow through? Will they do what I asked them to do? And so I think it's a good distraction and it's positive. And it's so good for my confidence as well. If I'm
mm.
not confident, I'm not succeeding anywhere. It's a bad thing about me, but they're helping me boost my confidence as well.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, that's the same for everyone. Like confidence is everything. I think it's half the battle. You talk about not mentioning tech from back in the day. Yeah, what did you do? Try and not mention MySpace or AOL or something like
I
that.
think I made a reference from Friends and then I had to backpedal and say,
Okay.
oh
Okay.
no.
Yeah, with all the reruns, they would have definitely heard of Friends. MySpace, you'd have probably been struggling, but Friends, I think you'd have been all right. Tell me about your public speaking. I'd like to hear about that. There's a pattern here. Like you've obviously like when you talked about moving to America, pushed yourself, exercised that muscle, got out your comfort zone. You're dancing. I know to get to your level, you would have been pushing yourself, getting out of your comfort zone. To do public speaking, you're getting out of your comfort zone. To mentor, so you've really creating that habit that we've talked about, and you're exercising this muscle to keep you moving forward, which is great. Public speaking is a massive one. More and more people in the security space are doing it. If you can get good at it and elevate your personal brand, it really helps career progression. It really helps your communication. It really helps others. Yeah. So tell us about the public speaking journey and how scary was it, and how do you, for anyone listening that wants to do it or wants to get better at it, can you help?
Yes, and I think that every time I am on a small or big stage, right the second when I have to start speaking, my heart just jumps
Mm.
off my chest in three different directions. And sometimes I admit it in front of the audience, depends, and sometimes I don't. But I just have to look at one person who is smiling or one person whose look is comforting. But sometimes I just say, look, and I say it a lot in front of students because I think it's helpful to them. And I say, look, I am interviewing often just like you are. And every time I interview, I'm nervous. And look, I'm nervous right now, even though I'm talking about the same topic. But what's different is that I have a different audience. So when you interview, you have a different audience. When I deliver on the same speech, I just have a different audience, and that's the unknown factor. Because sure, I
Mm.
can prepare my presentation over and over, but I don't know who's in front of me and how they'll react. Oh, I'm also very scared of, will my audience get bored, look on their phone, or I don't know, God forbid, fall asleep. And so when I build my presentations, I make sure that every fourth slide is a hook, is a shocking or interesting
Mm.
fact, is a question, is maybe something they don't expect. I just have to think that the attention span of individuals these days, and I have to trigger it every fourth slide.
Mm. I like that. So every fourth slide is something what a bit crazy, or just something a bit like bang, like just something to grab their attention again. I really like that.
I might start, let's say, in one direction and say, so what do you think happened then? Oh, this happened. No, that other thing happened, right? In order to prove a point, you just have this twists in your story.
Mm.
And I think then it keeps them attentive.
Mm.
Because look, we're half as interesting as we think we are, right? So it's really
Mm.
hard to keep a new audience
Yeah.
engaged.
Do you know what though? That when you're busy all the time, when you stop, I think you need to do that. You need to keep grabbing that attention back, because when the thing I can relate it to is last week, and we got a new piece of tech, this new CRM. I had to sit there and watch these YouTube videos, and it was on a Sunday. I wasn't that tired, but I was struggling to keep my eyes open, and I really like this new piece of tech. It's really important to the business, but I was struggling to focus on it, and that's just the point. I think if you're doing a presentation, so every fourth slide, something crazy.
And also
Um,
remembering people's names if possible, if you have a small audience,
mm,
that's for sure. And so I
mm,
do that exercise, and I got to the point when I don't understand when people say I'm bad with names. I'm thinking, wait, no, look at Tom. Okay, three letters. You got it. You can remember three letters,
mm,
okay?
mm,
But I remember people's names in my classes if they're 20 or 25. And I just come back and say, oh, just like Sarah said something, or like how Mike said before. And requoting people is so important. It brings them back immediately. It's like retweeting their tweet, right? They think, oh no, I have a larger audience right now. So
mm.
it's a really powerful tool, I think, for me to keep my audience engaged.
Yeah, definitely. It gives additional weight and clarification to the point you're making. It shows that other person you are listening. When you say their name, it's going to pique up their interest. I'm really glad you said about you feeling nervous and stuff like that, because I've talked about this before. I'm not as bad like here now in this studio thing. I'm okay. When I do the LinkedIn lives, I'm petrified, and I find it really difficult. So it is important to let everyone know that everyone feels like that. I heard on a it's either in a podcast or but basically it was saying like when we see confident people, they're getting stress, anxiety, nerves, and they're powering that into forward momentum. And then we go, oh God, look, she's really confident. And that's all it is. Some people can't struggle to get those feelings, that energy into forward momentum, and they just stop, or they never do it in the first place, which is it's a bit of a tragedy because they could be great. But yeah, when you see someone confident, just think all they're doing is channeling all those feelings we've all got into a forward push. That's
Absolutely.
all they're doing.
Yeah, and I presented one time behind a bigger podium, and I walked in, big mistake, with a big cup of tea. And right when I started, it spilled all over me, but you could not tell behind the podium, but I could feel the hot water just going from my rib all the way down to my leg. And I thought, oh my God, my dress and everything. And I got at the point in my presentation where I was talking about the fact that The most successful people I've ever seen and worked with in my life are the people who are able to sit in an uncomfortable situation and conversation the longest, right? They don't walk away, they're seeking discomfort almost. And then I stepped aside from my podium and I said, and this is how I've been here in front of you for 1 hour, soaked in tea, right? And you could not tell. And I hope that this moment makes me even better, right, for my next presentations.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. When you do something that feels uncomfortable, it always feels great after. You always feel like elated and lifted up and happy. It's like you just got to throw yourself in there to do it.
Yeah.
I think another thing is as well, Lena, like I think we should all try and care less. And what I mean by that is like when you walk onto that stage, like all those little things that like you think are, or I think are like really like everyone's, oh, they're definitely going to clock that, and they're definitely going to, they're probably not even thinking about it. It's like when
Oh,
it's like we all
absolutely.
overthink. I think like this could be, and this might not be public speaking. Like for people listening, they might be thinking about doing their first ever LinkedIn post, or they might even be thinking about liking something or resharing something. Just do it, because no one, like you said, no one's actually that bothered. Like we're not all that important. Like you just do it and crack on, because you're probably overthinking, and we're all guilty of it. I overthink all the time, but it's worth keeping in mind, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's a good book that I think you'd like. It's called You Already Know How to Be Great. And it talks precisely about that. How, for example, you're part of a team and let's say they decide to let you go, and then you go and start your own team and you forever work towards proving to your old team how awesome you are. Or I don't know, like from celebrities when they're in a band and one of them leaves, they're obsessed with this idea of showing them. Or you're breaking up with someone or somebody breaks up with you and you're training for a run, you're almost hoping to run into your ex so he can see that you're running and you're doing great. So
Mm.
yeah, we are obsessed with forever doing things that will impress some person that, to your point, is probably just having their lunch and not
Yeah.
even thinking about you.
Yeah. So the reason I've thought about that is because in my personal life, like some real couple of people that I know that have done really well, a bit older than me, and they just don't get. Sometimes they actually say and do stuff that is a little bit incorrect and they shouldn't do. But it's in a way, it's not that I like it, but it's like they just don't. They're just not thinking about. They're way less stressed because of it, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, need to keep that in mind. It's, I think, again, especially with social media and stuff like that, we're all like really bothered. But look, you've mentioned a couple of books already, so I don't know if you've got any more recommendations, but I always like to ask, it can be book, it can be pod, it can be, maybe it could even be influencer that you're following on YouTube or social or whatever it might be. But yeah, biggest book, pod, or anything like that's had or is having the most positive impact on your career or at the minute so far.
Yeah, I think I've lived my life as a giver, but then I read Give and Take by Adam Grant, and I thought, yes, I'm right. I'm right. I'm right not to ask people for money when I volunteer. It's okay. It's okay to do what I'm doing. So it validated a lot of my feelings. Never Eat Alone is another book that kind of is in line with that, being a giver. Thinking Fast and Slow is about thin slicing, right? And the assumptions we make about people. We were just talking about discomfort. There's a book, it's called Seeking Discomfort, Hunting Discomfort, that is really good. And there's a ton that I really love, but I'll just go back to Adam Grant. Every time he posts something, I'm just putting everything aside and I need to read his post. It's so clear, it's so genuine, it's so kind, it's so forward thinking. So I would recommend him as a organizational psychologist, and his book Give and Take, option B, Think Twice, but probably Give and Take is the best one.
Okay, give and take. We'll get them all in the show notes. I meant to write this down and tell our ops team so they don't have to fathom it out, but they can listen back and work it all out. It's absolutely fine. But yeah, do you know what you said about following people as well? I think that's really good. I read or saw something recently, and it was talking about like your diet shouldn't just be about what you eat; it's what you consume. Um, what you read, what you look at on social media. And if you're looking at absolute, complete, and utter crap or rubbish, you're going to start. Your mindset's probably going to drift. Your communication skills are going to drift. You're probably going to drift as a person. On the flip side, you start reading about and following guys like this Adam Grant chap that you just mentioned, and you're probably going to go the other way. I think following the right people, I'm pretty sure the algorithm, if you start following the right people, will show you more of the right people, how these things work. So I think that your social media diet essentially or what you're consuming and reading, I think it will make a massive difference over the long term. The compound effect will make a big difference to your success and career progression, won't it?
I can't agree more. I agree with you 100%. And it's a little bit scary sometimes to think that everything on social media can become a little bit of a rabbit hole. And who's to say that this is right? What if I start reading about the earth being flat and then I go down that rabbit hole and I'm still a smart individual, but hey, I just think that. So
Mm,
it's
mm,
just hard. Sometimes I'm scared when I'm being fed more of the same thing. I'm a little bit worried about, oh, am I going into a direction that is very narrow? But hey, yeah, I love Adam Grant. Hopefully I'm
mm.
right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I've completely jigged the order about here, but I'm just going to, as we come to the end here, I'm just going to finish up. I'd made a note to ask you about some tough times. I know you talked about when you first moved over to the US, it was pretty tough. Is there any other kind of setbacks that you've overcome, or any other tips or hints for getting over tough times? I'm just really conscious of the fact that at the minute there will be a lot of people that are having a tough time. Any other experiences that you can share that can inspire the listeners and help the listeners when it comes to building up resilience and strength on that front?
Yeah, I think tough times such happening to me most of the time when I do it to myself, right? I make a mistake, I make a bad decision, and there's a consequence. But at least I can deal with it, look at myself and say, all right, you had it coming for you. So I think the tougher is though when you do the right thing, right? Say you land at an amazing company and then you get laid off. And I know this happened to so many thousands of us, and it's hard to process because what else could I have done? Could I maybe just seeing the future, but I don't know how else I could have avoided this. And it's really difficult to overcome it. And I was anxious and somewhat depressed in my first few days when I found out I don't no longer have a job. And so an exercise that I learned from somebody else was, and I don't know, this might be for you, might not, but it works for me. I
Mm,
divide myself in half. One is a child, one is a parent. And I do that mirroring technique that you're talking about. And I think I say to myself as a child, I'm anxious, I'm scared, I don't think I'll get a job soon enough. And then the parent says, you're anxious, you're scared, you don't think you'll get a job soon enough. And then the child is, wait, no, well, I got a job before. It's not that hard. And the parent says, yeah, you got a job before. It's not that hard. And then just climb yourself out of it. Because the
mm.
truth is, we've all been separated from a job, whether we wanted it or not. And we both came back up. So just look back at your downs and ups and believe that it's going to happen again.
Yeah, definitely. And those conversations, by the way, we all have those conversations in our head. So for people that are listening that think they're weird, they're not. Like, we all have them. I read this in a book. I think this might, I've talked about Tony Robbins loads today, but he was basically saying you've got to get good at having these conversations in your head because you're going to have them. So get good at having them, make them positive, make them helpful, make them related to you moving forward in your life and your career, because that's going to really help. So yeah, those conversations in my head, I have them. Sounds like you have them. So yeah, just for everyone listening, they are very normal.
Thank you for
So
validating.
no worries. And also as well, like that thing as well, like you mentioned about getting laid off and going, God, is this my fault? I think that's a real strength for you, and again for anyone listening, because you're self-critiquing yourself, and again that means you're going to improve it. It's the opposite to going, oh, it's their fault, it's their fault. You're looking within and looking for areas you can enhance yourself and improve and move forward. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I remember just getting on LinkedIn and thinking I will post a video on LinkedIn and I will be different. I will not talk about how I got laid off. I will not talk about how disappointed I am. I'll just talk about the fact that I now have a lot of free time. So if anyone needs job seeking coaching, I'm here. And I found I worked with so many people during that time before I studied my consulting that landed into a full-time job, and I no longer had that time. But I said I can make something good out of it.
Yeah, definitely. Good. I think that's a good one to finish on. I've enjoyed this. It's really flowed nicely. We had a plan, we didn't stick to it, which is always better, I think. It just more of a natural conversation. So it's been good. Have we covered everything? Have we about done it, do you think?
I think so.
Elena, thank you for your time. There's loads of stuff there. It's really nice to hear you open up about tough times and good times. We've covered everything from communication, progression, and kind of loads of like general, really good career progression advice there. Thank you. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.